Within 3 years, India's neighborhood has completely changed. It looks different, with drastic, dramatic, even violent regime changes all around us. It started with the military rule in Myanmar in 2021. After a military coup caught on this YouTuber's feed, it now extends into 2024. It was soon followed by Afghanistan in 2021. Taliban took over within days after the US troops pulled out suddenly. Ashraf Ghani had to flee. Kabul, with little resistance but extreme violence that was witnessed, went from a fairly democratic government to the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Sri Lanka's Prime Minister Gotabaya Rajapaksa had to flee the country in 2022, followed by a massive political upheaval, and that was because of the economic concerns that had led the spark. Military took over in Bangladesh recently, forced Sheikh Hasina to flee. Mob violence, vandalism and lynching is being reported on the ground. An interim government has taken over, but it mostly has new, fresh players as political leaders. Pakistan, where the serving Prime Minister Imran Khan was removed, thrown into jail, full chaos and worse. Next, followed by fixed elections that were organized. Nepal, in many ways, is sadly falling into China's financial clutches. Maldives, the island nation, has faced multiple crises over the years, from the 1988 coup attempt to 2018 crisis, and then a pro-China President Muizzu's India Out campaign. The repercussions of all of this on India while we try and maintain our stability. If you're sitting in India, watching all of this unfold one after another around you right across the border, how do you feel? It's a realization that we are largely politically stable, have always been, economically stable presently at 5th largest globally and growing. We are loud and argumentative for sure, but we are tolerant of differing beliefs. We have been almost there facing a crisis at several times, but always ensured stability as a nation after all. The chaos has never lasted so long in this country that leads to a political anarchy. But also we realize now how fragile that situation could be looking at either border today. Let me help you with some examples. This is Sheikh Hasina, Prime Minister of Bangladesh till 4th of August. By 5th of August, she was seen fleeing in a hurriedly arranged helicopter with 45 minutes of ultimatum by the army. Mob violence and lynching against her supporters, targeted attacks against Hindus and other minorities. Bangladesh citizens say that what we see in Bangladesh is a revolution. It's people's anger against corruption and dictatorship. So the sitting leader of the nation had to flee the nation within minutes to avoid assassination or lynching. When I compare this to India, this has never happened in our modern democratic history, 77 years. India's worst days probably was the emergency era of the 1970s, and the public did revolt in mass numbers. But even the Indira Gandhi back then was thrown out of power, not like this horrific last-minute exile, but through elections that were organized in which she lost in 1977. So our election systems have always been robust, irrespective of who has been in power. There's every single time a peaceful transition with elections that have taken place. Sometimes the Congress Party or the National Front or the Bharatiya Janata Party. Whether P.V. Narasimha Rao or Atal Bihari Vajpayee or Dr. Manmohan Singh and now Narendra Modi completing their full terms. Constant reforms analyzed and done from ballot to the electronic voting machines. Sure, there have been heated debates, polarizing campaigns even, but eventually an elected Prime Minister has always led India, and then over to the next. We have had several opportunities of public anger over the years, turning into much worse. But when has an Indian Army chief come on our television screens to address the nation like here and say, "We are taking over, the elected government is out"? Like Bangladesh, Myanmar also managed to briefly boast a democratic government, but soon a military coup took over and continues to stand. And a military will always be very different from politicians. In India, the powers of institutions are defined of the armed forces or of elected leaders. The discipline, the training, the courage of uniformed personnel are best suited to maintain peace, not politics. And our soldiers, as you must have seen, are always anyway engaged in public service. Building bridges in Wayanad, safeguarding the border in Jammu and Kashmir, rescuing locals and devotees in Kedarnath or in the conflict-ridden Manipur, not letting that violence spill on to other states. Here I must acknowledge the wisdom of our nation's founders, men and women, freedom fighters, who ensured that systems were made and no sweeping powers, defined functions of the legislature, executive and judiciary. The court verdicts even today are not simply in line with what the government wants, many examples of it on a daily basis. But it was not just India. Initially, Pakistan and Bangladesh also tried in the beginning to do the same. But it is to India's credit that we continued with it despite differing ideologies and over 7 decades. Touch wood on that. In Pakistan, no prime minister has ever completed their tenure. Imagine that. It's the same 77 years as a modern nation. Prime ministers either assassinated, overthrown, forced to resign or forced into exile. Remember Imran Khan, that chaotic arrest and that bucket-wala court appearance? He's still jailed. Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, his party, completely in disarray. Party workers continue to be in fear, contesting as independents. They don't have any other option. This was Pakistan in 2022. Remember Lalu Prasad Yadav, jailed and convicted on charges of corruption. Once a powerful former chief minister, former railways minister, but he did get a fair trial too. His son became the deputy chief minister, today stands as a strong opposition leader. The party RJD is an important opposition party nationally. So even influential leaders like Lalu had to face the law. But there was a system to ensure that no political leaderless upheaval was seen on the streets. At state level, Chandrababu Naidu was jailed, returned winning elections with a thumping majority. Karunanidhi was jailed in Tamil Nadu. His son M.K. Stalin is today's the chief minister. And there are many more examples at different layers. Basically, the main important democratic institution continues to function. Jammu Kashmir did face a bloody conflict for 30 years, but because of Pakistan's deliberate, intentional, open, blatant interference. Eventually, terrorists and radicals faced a crackdown. Peace efforts and changes are seen in the valley. Schools can function, mass violence no more. Peaceful elections were recently held for the Lok Sabha, where varying ideological leaders did win, not just of any single party. Nazar na lage to that. The fact is, Pakistan did not succeed in separating Kashmir from India. The fact is that a lot of this political stability comes from economic stability of a nation. India has maintained its economy and currently stands 5th globally. The International Monetary Fund said this about India: a bright spot in an otherwise dark horizon. Sri Lanka, Nepal and Pakistan are facing declining foreign exchange reserves and increasingly are in debt. And sadly, because of that, they are falling in the clutches of China. According to reports, Pakistan owes over 70% of external bilateral debt to China. Maldives over 60%, Sri Lanka over 50%, Nepal approximately 30% and Bangladesh over 20% owes to China. So I kept China for the last. Yes, they appear to be more developed in infrastructure. They have a stronger economy. They are India's biggest competitor in Asia and way more gold medals in Olympics. But no democracy. No multiple party system like India has. No multiple platforms to say for you what you want. There is a stronghold with real dictatorship. One party decides, the Chinese Communist Party, and has decided for decades with no alternative. So all that shines is not always gold. The Tiananmen Square massacre. It was a student-led protest demanding liberal laws and an open society. But the response was brute force, not simply lathi charge. Official accounts stand at 241 dead and 7,000 injured. Was the dead more? Your guess is as good as mine. In India, the Anti-Citizenship Amendment Act and the anti-farm law protests were sensitive junctures for the country. Borders were choked, protesters were angry, and for more than a year. Eventually, the farm law decision was taken back by the leaders. The CAA was implemented with a clear communication that it was to help the persecuted in neighbor nations. It was not to snatch away Indian people's rights. Because you must understand, in Bangladesh, Hindus have dipped from 22% in 1951 to below 8% in 2022. In Pakistan, minorities now stand between 2 to 3%. These are single digits and reducing. In Afghanistan, barely about only 106 are now left in Kabul. It is not easy for them to even hold an opinion in such times, let alone be critical in the open. In India, minorities are vocal, visible and politically strong, with support from activists and intellectuals, and rightly so. An all-party meeting was recently organized where the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar was briefing. There was maturity shown by Leader of Opposition Rahul Gandhi and Congress Chief Mallikarjun Kharge. No unnecessary nasty words at each other. Realizing India's internal border situation right now is a bigger priority to be kept safe and stable. The government at the centre too is treading cautiously. Prime Minister Modi has been a friend to Sheikh Hasina. India, Bangladesh have been allies. So Prime Minister Modi congratulated Mohammad Yunus for now leading Bangladesh and looking at collective growth of both the nations. While we continue to shelter Hasina as a former Prime Minister, as a woman leader, these are following basic political and humanitarian protocols. As I conclude, India has always had a neighbor as friends policy. Nobody is big or small. Each one is an independent nation, but it's also a collective, like we have seen from the Panchsheel Agreement to the SAARC. Because India cannot grow alone with an unstable neighborhood around us. India has always believed in the civilizational ethos of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And India knows that collective growth, mutual respect and non-interference will lead to a prosperous continent. But constant, sudden, suspicious changes across the borders disturb that stability of the region too. Yes, India has witnessed communal riots and violence, assassination and caste tensions. But every time the strength of people and sensibilities in politics eventually defined and saved India's future. For the love of India and to keep its borders safe. India is not perfect, but we must remember, not everyone is happy with an India rising, of becoming a democratic global force to watch out for. We are on the right track. So as Indians, we need to ensure that our internal differences do not lead to a spark that could light a fire that may burn down the entire nation. Because this is the only homeland that we truly have. Thank you for watching.